Hello, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. Since 2016, I've been answering your questions, giving advice and inspiration to countless gamers. Here, you can ask questions in the comments and get your own videos as an answer. So I encourage you, enjoy by all means, but come back to visit with your friend, the Dungeon Tutor. Hello friends, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome! Today's topic for RPGaDay 2025 is Nemesis for the 26th day. And a Nemesis is kind of an important thing in the cycle of role-playing games. It's a very common, although not essential, part of a lot of overall campaigns, stories, what have you. A nemesis is not necessarily the big bad evil guy of a setting. It is a person that exists as a foil to someone else. So, if that's your characters, a nemesis should be that person who personally has the ability to thwart them. Whatever that means. If you wanted to look into, say, the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, who was the nemesis? Was it the Nazis, the true evil? No, it was Belloc, the French archaeologist who kept getting in Indiana Jones's way. So your nemesis does not necessarily have to be the final opponent of the storyline that you're going to be involved in, but they can be a very rewarding part for a game master. And the reason is pretty obvious. You give the players somebody to personally dislike, somebody who has the ability to injure them. That doesn't necessarily need to be stopped at all costs. They can be introduced as an annoying subplot at any time, and their fingerprints can be all over things that inconvenience or stymie the players. This leads to animosity, and it leads to elevating the nemesis as a personal foil to the players. And, of course, to their characters as well. I mean, the players will learn to hate your nemesis for the characters. The characters should absolutely be incandescent whenever they have to deal with the nemesis after they've proven themselves a couple of times by, again, thwarting the player characters. Now, the amount that they screw with your players obviously will have a distinct impact on how this all goes. If, for instance, the players are, we'll go with one of the more tired old tropes, the characters are collecting certain items, say 5 elemental rings of power to summon the elemental dragon to ward off the evil bad guy. And they got the first one to start them on this path of this quest to find them. Upon attempting to get the second one, their nemesis steps in and snatches it out right under their hands. They get to see it, and then they see the nemesis walk away with it. Putting himself into a position, by the way, where the players cannot get him. Whether that's behind a row of his flunkies, stooges, or pawns, like Belloc did, or because he causes some sort of cave collapse or something that physically prevents them from coming after him. But it's a lot more satisfying if they can see him leave. Just, gives you the chance to drive that dagger home. And that is a pretty good move to set somebody up as a nemesis. Somebody who immediately thwarts their forward progress, will force a rematch at some point because they'll still want to get that elemental ring from him. And when they do that, it's almost like fighting the big bad evil guy in a way. Now, of course, your nemesis can be the big bad evil guy of a storyline. They can actually be the person that is thwarting them. They can be the person who stands against them over and over again. But it doesn't have to be that way, and oftentimes maybe shouldn't necessarily be that way. because there's plenty of ire to go around in a good-sized campaign. In a small campaign, sure, they can be one and the same. But if you have a lengthy campaign, there's all kinds of plots and subplots you can run with the Nemesis. First of all, you can have a sympathetic Nemesis. Belloc was at least partially sympathetic in Raiders of the Lost Ark because he generally wasn't a bad guy. He wanted to help Marion. He didn't want to just turn her over to the Nazis because he wasn't sympathetic to the Nazis, which definitely helps him by comparison. He was only being used by the Nazis and let them use him for their resources so that he could get the grand prize. But that being the way it went, he was also there with, again, the ultimate force of evil as allies of convenience. And that definitely, painted him with a pretty dark tone. He could have had a redemption arc. And I think the fact that he, again, tried to screen Marion to a certain extent showed that he wasn't irredeemably bad. And likewise, you can also take that same aspect. You can have a Nemesis who isn't really, perhaps, as dark as he's painted. It would be easy to say Darth Vader, perhaps in Star Wars, was a nemesis of Luke Skywalker's, who later was redeemed. And you probably wouldn't be too far off base from that. I, however, think, painting him as the big bad evil guy, because in two different episodes, Vader was the big bad evil guy. He was the guy in the TIE fighter that was in danger of shooting down Luke, and it was only through the intervention of Han Solo that he didn't get him. And then he was also the saber scene in Cloud City. So he clearly was a big bad evil guy level villain. He did have a redemption arc in Return of the Jedi, though. So it's a knife edge in that case. But in many other games, it's really not. And it can work just like that in your games as well. Sometimes having a person get an investment of the care of your players gives you the latitude to do different things with them, including, again, a turn from being heelish, being a villain, to being an ally, maybe an uncomfortable ally, but certainly one that the party might need at some point. That could be an option. Number two, it could also be an option that they may have a goal that separates them from the big bad evil guy, like an idealistic goal. The Nemesis may have reasons for doing what he does because he feels it's the right thing to do, that he's trying to protect somebody or he's trying to save something or something like that. But as it works out, maybe he sees the player's opinion. That might help him to turn. Or he may act in a way that the players didn't necessarily want him to, but he does it for his own reasons. The purity of his vision that clashes with the enemy, making him kind of a slantwise enemy turned ally. The enemy of my enemy is my friend in a way. And that can be a very good usage for a nemesis as well. Something, again, the players will have some conflicted emotions about. We really didn't like this guy, but it turns out he helped us without seeming to mean to. That can be pretty impressive as well. One way to make a nemesis, besides putting them in a position, again, where it's convenient for them to thwart the player characters. And by the way, doing that in a way where he does it just because that's the way the story goes is kind of lazy. Most players would be much better if they could actually see the avenue that the Nemesis takes that got them to the point where they can thwart the players. Just dropping him in, poof, haha, I win, poof, he's gone. So unsatisfying. To see the actual genius of a Nemesis and that the party can see how he gets there, how he, in some cases, struggled through things maybe similarly to the player characters, generally can be something that will be more impressive of that Nemesis rather than just the tooth grinding. Well, yeah, because he got there because that's his plot. That's why he has to be there, because that's his story. Showing him actually struggling and doing the thing very coolly, by the way, because it shows how good he is at what he does. Or they. I'm just using he, but it could be, you know, definitely any active force against the player characters. Men, women, robots, what have you. And I think also a useful trick in building a Nemesis, despite showing off their competence, besides thwarting the player characters, another thing that really does make a good Nemesis is when the players can see something of themselves in the Nemesis. It's kind of tired, but it is effective, of making your Nemesis a shadow version of the players' characters. So, for example, if the group is a paladin of an exemplar of good, you have a rogue, a suave debonair rogue, and you have a, we'll say, a wizard who's a complete doofus, but he is completely fixated on his magic. Okay. A pretty good blend of the tropes of role-playing games. So if the enemy group is a fallen paladin who had his worst day ever, but was along a similar line of glory to the paladin in the group, and then fell in one dramatic, apocalyptic change of his personality because of something, especially if that something was absolutely fate cheated. Like he faced a betrayal that wasn't really a betrayal, but it was demonstrated to him that his own faith betrayed him and caused him to fall. So that when the paladin faces off against him, he sees himself through a dark mirror. That can be very poignant. For the suave rogue, instead maybe going up against a mastermind, say a bard mastermind. Whereas the suave rogue gets by on charisma and his personal skills, the mastermind manipulates. He gets people to do what he wants, not because he's such a nice guy and so likable, but because he's got all the answers and he's constantly figuring out ways to cheat to put the players in a particularly nasty spot. And then maybe for your wizard, who is incredibly focused on his magic and has no other skills, pit him up against a sorcerer to whose magic comes easy. He's like, hey, bruh, why are you working so hard, bruh? I just went out for the night, came home with 3 ladies, and you're all just banging books, and ooh, look at me. I can throw fireballs just like you can, bro. You really should lay off a bit. It's darn easy for me. Why are you acting like it's so hard? Oh my gosh, you would want to punch that guy so hard with your wizardly fists. Perfect Nemesis. If that group of 3, say because of the mastermind, finds a way to thwart the player characters, guarantee you, hate, rage, go after them, especially if they're as obnoxious or as divisive as I just outlaid, would be a wonderful Nemesis group. And if you want to tie them into the big bad evil guy, go ahead, but you know what? That would be a great group to independently get the ire of the players. So you don't have to manipulate it into bending it around your big story. You can have this group that you can pull out as a not-so-random encounter anytime you need the player's noses tweaked a little bit. Just give them a hint that this particular group is in the area and poof, watch their interest spike. Nemesis, they're great. They're wonderful heat magnets for your group. And if you use them effectively, without making them seem unconquerable, I know I've seen Nemesis done badly. I have one player was telling me about his campaign, and their Nemesis was a half-orc warrior, very powerful, who had a helm of teleportation. So whenever the players would get into a fight with him and they would start to win, he would go poof and gone and untouchable. They could not get him. Nobody ever dropped the crit that they would have needed to do it, which is disappointing, clearly, because they were constantly frustrated with this guy showing up, attacking them, and then untouchable. Poof, again. They really got to hate this guy, and that's a different kind of hate from what I'm talking about, because he didn't earn that hate. He had a gimmick. And so he was just frustrating. But the players grew to absolutely loathe that character, not because he was so good at being a villain, because he had that gimmick that made him untouchable. So yes, that's my talk on Nemesis. I hope you liked it. I am the Dungeon Tutor, and I have all kinds of fun things yet. There's still some topics left on RPGaDay that I want to talk about, and we'll get to those day by day. But thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next time, and if I do, I hope that you, in that time between then and now, have had a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, but stay safe out there. Until that next time, farewell.